Flags at the White House at half-staff, honoring Senator John McCain, who passed away at the age of 81. The nation is mourning the death of Senator McCain.
And in Arizona late last night, a procession near his ranch honoring the maverick of the Senate. Soon, all Americans will have a chance to pay their respects as he lies in state in the U.S. Capitol.
Alicia Acuna is live in Phoenix with the details. Good morning, Alicia.
Good morning, Griff. Good morning, Ed and Rachel. Yes, Arizonans and all Americans will have a number of opportunities to pay their respects to the late senator. Starting here, there will be church services, and he will also lie in state in the Capitol building behind me. From here, Senator McCain is expected to lie in state in the Capitol Rotunda in Washington. That is a rare honor and will happen later this week. He will then receive a full-dress funeral service at the Washington National Cathedral, where Vice President Mike Pence will reportedly attend. McCain will then be laid to rest at the cemetery at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis. This was a wish he expressed some time ago, that his final resting place be his alma mater, where his storied military career began. His father and grandfather, by the way, are buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Within hours of his passing last night, a motorcade left his family ranch north of here, making its way to Phoenix and the mortuary. He was first elected to Congress in 1982, representing Arizona in the House for 2 terms, then the Senate for 6. The word institution is an understatement to describe his presence here, so it was no surprise that when news surfaced of his passing, folks showed up to pay tribute to this true American hero. And as we get more details firmed up on the coming ceremonies, of course, we will bring them to you. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Alicia. And he will be the 29th person in history to lie in a state in the Capitol. It's going to be a big honor. The last one to do so, Senator Daniel Inouye.
Wow, remarkable. And Bret Baier, of course, is the host of Special Report with Bret Baier. And long before he was covering presidential campaigns, he was also covering the Pentagon and traveling around the world with men and women in uniform. And Bret, as we bring you in, we appreciate you joining us this morning. This is a man we could talk about so many layers of his life, but his impact on the military and defending this country seems to be pretty massive.
Yeah, good morning. I think that's the biggest part of his life, his service, not only as a member of the U.S. military and obviously his time as prisoner of war, but also his service to protect, fund, make sure that the military was doing the right thing as the Senate Armed Services Committee chairman. And he was such a big figure. You know, I talked about it yesterday a little bit, that when I covered the Pentagon, you know, people would shudder in their boots to testify in front of him. But they always knew that he had the military's back. And, you know, remember Abu Ghraib during Iraq. You know, McCain was on the forefront of pushing the administration on that. Remember, you know, all of the different elements, Gitmo, pushing back on extreme interrogation techniques. I mean, he stood on principle, and a lot of it had to do with the U.S. military.
Yeah, Bret, when you mentioned that last night, Vice President Cheney put out a statement honoring his legacy, and they didn't always see eye to eye, because you're right, you and I covered the Bush White House, and the fact of the matter is they were frustrated at times that John McCain was pushing back on enhanced interrogation techniques, but his experience, 5.5 years in that POW camp, gave him a much different perspective than others.
Yeah, and he was respected because of that. And his relationship with people across the aisle was really unique. He could stand on principle. He could be a fighter on Republican, you know, talk points and bills. But then he could reach out with people like John Kerry and, you know, help during the Clinton administration in the normalization with Vietnam. Or he could, you know, he was one of those rare figures in the Senate that sometimes you didn't know where he was.
Bret, you said last night in our channel's coverage that you feel like the last speech on the Senate floor in July of last year is really the one that we will look back to. He spoke about a lot of reaching across the aisle, and that, what's so important about that speech that we will remember?
Well, I think he was talking and kind of instructing his colleagues to stand up for what they believe, and just don't be bullied over and rolled over by a late night process that jams things down their throat. That is how a lot of things, as you know, have gotten through because they were up against a cliff one way or another, a financial cliff or a deadline. McCain was fighting for regular order and fighting for each individual person representing their voters.
Brett, you know, we hear a lot in politics about term limits, but when I read John McCain's last speech, I was really reminded of the wisdom and the institutional knowledge and the love of the Senate that comes from somebody who serves for such a long time in the Senate. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, there are a lot of people who had a problem with John McCain. Let's not sugarcoat it. I mean, there were conservatives who really had an issue. Not to mention, beyond his vote on Obamacare, he, though, knew the way the Senate worked. You know, you had Chuck Schumer yesterday come out and say that they're considering renaming the Russell Senate office building for John McCain, and he's going to put that forward. Well, Russell was pretty much the guy who figured out the Senate, who knew how it worked, and Johnson, Lyndon Johnson, learned from him and became kind of the operator of the Senate. Senator John McCain was another guy who knew how to run the Senate and how to get things through various ways.
Yeah, Brett, you know, Chad Pergram, our great senior producer on Capitol Hill, was saying last night that, of course, if it's the McCain Senate office building, it'd be McCain SOB. And maybe McCain would have a laugh about that because, as you know, as much as he reached across the aisle and had some fun and had a great sense of humor, he had a temper, and he was upfront about saying that when people got his dander up, he'd give it right back to them.
Oh, yeah. And he would needle you and kind of give you that little impish smile. I think he would love the McCain SOB. You know, and it's interesting that you look back at his life and you saw that HBO documentary ad about For Whom the Bell Tolls. That deals with the Ernest Hemingway book and movie, obviously, and his protagonist, Robert Jordan, the center of that story, in which McCain just really saw his life, and he would often refer to For Whom the Bell Tolls, and today the bell tolls for John McCain. Absolutely.
Well, you know Bret Baier quite well. On this channel, he will, of course, be leading our coverage this coming week on Special Report, 6 p.m. Eastern every night, but also throughout the day, giving insights and analysis like that. And then after Labor Day, the Senate is going to be going back and dealing, of course, with the confirmation hearings of Brett Kavanaugh, which is another big issue coming up, and Brett will be leading our coverage. So we appreciate you taking some time out this morning.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Brett.
All right. It is, at this point, is it an attempt to repair the Democratic Party? The DNC, as we noted earlier, is now limiting superdelegates. We look ahead to the impact on the next presidential election. I bet Bernie Sanders wishes they had done that a few years ago.
A little late for that. And our coverage of the legacy of John McCain continues with the tributes pouring in this morning.
My great privilege was to serve in the company of heroes. I witnessed 1,000 acts of courage and compassion and love, and it was a spiritually uplifting experience for me in many ways, and those that I love most and respect and admire are those that I was there with.